So the topic of celebrating holidays for my family became very important for us when my son was diagnosed with his milk and egg allergy. And it was right before the holiday of Passover. And if anybody knows anything about, hold on 2 seconds, it's not starting. There we go. If anybody knows anything about Jewish holidays in particular, we eat food all the time. And it's such an important aspect of it. And then if you know anything about Passover, everything is about eggs. You buy like 8 dozen eggs to cook all of the recipes for all the meals. And I'm like, how am I going to do this and prepare a meal for my child without milk and eggs? And then by the next Jewish holiday, we were forced to realize that not only did we not now have milk and eggs for my son, but he was also formula only at that point. So how, as a Jewish family, were we going to actually celebrate holidays? And I started looking for things and ideas, and I couldn't find anything. And so I went to Kids with Food Allergies, and I started creating booklets on how do you celebrate different holidays. And you'll see later on in my presentation that there are actually numerous resources now for this. However, in a general aspect, the most important thing to think about when going into any of these holidays is all about attitude. Just like Linda was talking about how do you prepare food and everything, you have to be positive. Your kids are going to pick up on the fact that you're not positive. So if you're not, they're not going to be. In addition to that, you're going to have to refocus your mindset. The holiday can no longer be about your food. It's going to have to be about everything else. So you're going to actually have to go out and look at the religious significance, the familial significance. You can also look at the community significance it has. It's going to be that important for you to refocus it and just look at completely other aspects of that holiday. So with that in mind, you're going to have to use your imagination sometimes, because not everything is going to be as easy as just relying on your old traditions. And using your imagination, the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want. Just because it wasn't done before doesn't mean it can't be done today and it can't be done now. And with that in mind, you can go out and you can explore. You can go online nowadays and you can Bing or Google the holidays and find out different traditions that people use around the world and within your own communities, and start integrating those traditions, especially if there are no food traditions, into your home. Be willing to experiment. It is okay if you do something and that year it doesn't work and it's a complete flop. Next year, you get to try again. That's the great thing about holidays. They come up every single year. So be willing to experiment. Be daring. You can do, as I was saying earlier, you can do whatever you want, and you can try new and exciting things. So for my family, when we were doing Passover, the entire thing is about a meal. And you actually have to make sandwiches with meals to represent things. And we had to really think outside of the box and come up with new ways so that we could actually have a Seder plate for my son when the Seder plate is literally all food on it. Create new traditions. There's a Jewish thought that after you do something 3 times, you have a new tradition. So make those new traditions for your families, and the things that you love, year after year you do them, and they're going to be the things that your children remember and are going to enjoy and love, because the traditions that they know are the ones that they think about. They're not going to think about the traditions you never did, that you were raised with. And most importantly, have fun. It's all about having fun. That's what holidays are for. So enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, your kids aren't going to enjoy it, and nobody else is going to enjoy it, and it's going to be absolutely miserable. So with that in mind, the most important thing to do for any holiday is preparation, because the reality is it is harder when you're trying to prepare for holidays when you cannot just fall back on your old traditions. So create a game plan for your children and for yourself so that when you go into the holiday, you know, oh, I need to do this and this and this, and have your list ready. So your kids don't need to know that you're necessarily creating this list, but you have it, and you know what you have to do to give them the best holiday experience, and to give yourself, honestly, the best holiday experience you can. And that will mean researching. You're going to have to do a lot of research. As I said earlier, you can't rely on those things that you've done over and over and over again. And you're going to have to look for new and creative ways to integrate the holiday experience into your home. With that in mind, set the mood. So start making arts and crafts. In general, for most of our children, arts and crafts are a safe way to integrate the holiday, especially for younger kids, but honestly, even for teens and stuff, I still like doing crafts, honestly. and bring in the holiday spirit by doing those kind of fun things that you know your children would really love. Decorate, decorate, decorate. So I was talking with one of the moms yesterday, and she was saying how they just deck their house out for Halloween. These are the kind of things that your kids are going to remember. So they're not going to think about necessarily on Halloween how they didn't get to trick or treat. They're going to remember that their house was the scariest, most fun house that all the neighborhood kids wanted to come to because it was the coolest one there was. Talk about the holiday. Start teaching your child about the holiday. I know, at least for Jewish holidays, there's a lot of significance, and there's a lot to talk about so that they can have fun and enjoy it and not really be relying just on thinking about the food and everything, and they can actually learn what the holiday significance is and what fun things there are, what you used to do, what people used to do in the old country is what we say in our Jewish family, and then listening to music. So if you think about food, one of the most important things about food for holidays is you smell it and you think back to those moments and those memories you had when your mom was breaking food in the house or you were eating that meal. Music has that same tendency where if you listen to music, you can be transported back to that place. So if you give your children that atmosphere with the music in their house, you can really transport your child and give them those memories to last so that when they're 20 years old or whatever and they hear that song coming on the radio or in their own home, they can remember all the most amazing holiday memories that you created for them and the holidays that you did for them. So how do you celebrate the holidays when you're at home? So for a child who eats, create new and safe food traditions. There are a lot of amazing recipes out there that are at like places like the Kids with Food Allergies recipe database. There's also Linda Koss's cookbook. I know within the Jewish community they have created allergy-free cookbooks for different holidays. Find those cookbooks, find those recipes, and recreate it. It is perfectly acceptable to say, you know what, we can't have stuffing, we're gluten-free now, and just create a different type of stuffing. So we go every year with friends of ours who have EOS, and we have a rice stuffing now, and that has become our traditional stuffing for our families. And then the other option is, if you're having a really hard time creating a meal that represents or is similar to the meal that you would have on that holiday, create new traditions for your child by using their favorite foods. It is perfectly acceptable that if they can't have pumpkin pie, but you make the best, I don't know, dessert with cookies, like the molasses cookies or something that Linda was talking about, it is perfectly acceptable that that becomes your holiday tradition for your child, and that's what they eat every Thanksgiving. There's nothing wrong with that. So for a child who's on formula only, it's a little more challenging sometimes, and it really will depend on where your family is emotionally and how they feel comfortable being at the table. If you have a child, formula only, who's comfortable sitting at the table, I recommend having activities at the table. We have probably as much activities now on our table as we do actually food for Yael because he can't eat. And that's what he's going to do. So we have coloring books, we have puzzles, we have arts and crafts for him. The other idea is also to have special presents. So when everybody is getting their course or their meal, you can have like a little present waiting at their plate for them so that while everybody else is kind of noshing on stuff and eating and talking and everything, they can be opening up their special present and finding something. And this can be done age appropriately. So it doesn't matter if the kid is younger or if you have a teenager or even if you have an adult sitting at your table who has EOS and needs to avoid food. Now, the next suggestion I have is something that we do with our kid, but I would not recommend this for everybody, but Yoey loves to smell food. It's a very fulfilling experience for him, so he actually chooses to have everything that we're eating on his plate, and he literally sits there and smells the food, and he has things he likes and things he doesn't, and he passes up certain things. Like chocolate cake, for example, is his favorite thing. He smells it, and he's like, oh, Mommy, this is the best. So you can give your child the experience of smelling that food. So that's a suggestion I would only recommend, obviously, for children who aren't tempted by the food and would want to take it if it was in front of them. Now, the most important thing also is to realize that just because your child is the one who can't eat or can't eat everything, it doesn't mean that everybody else shouldn't really respect the fact that your child can't eat, and I really think it's important to integrate the child into other activities at the table so they don't feel like they're left out. So I would recommend doing activities at the table that everybody can do. So for example, on Thanksgiving, you can tell everybody before they come to your house that they should pack a suitcase of things that they would pack if they had to leave their home and travel across the ocean and could only take one suitcase. And then everybody could talk about this at the table. And the other thing, for those of you who are newly diagnosed or having a really hard time, your child has gone, no foods or something, and right now it's just too hard for you to deal with eating a meal, you can just skip the meal entirely and focus on other family fun activities like playing football or going to a sports activity, volunteering at a hospital, something like that, that would take the focus completely off of food. Celebrating at someone else's house is actually more difficult, and I would recommend for those of you who are choosing to celebrate at somebody else's house to find a home that is extremely supportive. If you go to somebody's house that's not supportive and they're refusing to create food for you or allowing you to bring food to your child or don't care that your child has a contact allergy or something, it is going to be a very stressful situation, and it's going to take a really hard time of year for your family and make it even more difficult. So it's important to try and find either family or friends who are supportive, and therefore when you ask if you can help make the meal, they might be willing to have you either come to their house and cook with them, or you can bring some dishes with you when you come to the meal. They might also be willing to have you give them recipe ideas, so even if like maybe they really love cooking, you can actually give them food that they'd be willing to make for you. And we actually have friends who, when Yoe was at least milk and contact allergic, they would do that for us, and they were learning how to cook, for example, bake bread without eggs. Bring a similar meal that is safe for your child. If they are not able to make a full meal out of your child's allergens, it's a way that your child can feel like he's having a similar meal even though they can't. And for children who cannot eat, I would recommend bringing toys and games and other special treats so they do have something. Come before or after the meal. So if you are somebody who is really not comfortable coming for the meal, but you really want to celebrate the holiday with your family or your friends, ask them if you can come before or after the meal and make an activity for all of you that you can do before or after. And then allow your child to get up. The reality is most of your kids and teens don't want to be sitting at the meal with the adults. It's not interesting. It gets boring. Let them go and have fun and do their things on their own while you guys are sitting and having the actual meal. So school celebrations are a time that's also very difficult, particularly because a lot of times people really don't understand why it's so important not to have food, especially if there are food allergens that can cause more life-threatening issues. So I would recommend to prepare in advance for that and go to the school and speak to the teacher before the school year starts and ask if there is a class parent. And if there's not a class parent and you have the time, ask if you can become the class parent. Or speak and have a meeting with the class parent, the teacher, and yourself, and come up with a policy of what you're going to do for the entire year for that class. And with that policy, you can actually see if you can avoid food altogether and see if instead of doing food-based celebrations, you can do arts and crafts-based celebrations or game-based celebrations. So it's really ignoring food entirely. If they're not willing to avoid food entirely, I would come prepared with a list of what's safe for your child. And not just in terms of the ingredients that are safe, but an actual list of food products that people could buy and bring to a class celebration, because the thing that freaks other parents out the most is not just that your child is avoiding their food, but they're like, well, where the heck am I supposed to find this stuff? It was hard for us to find this stuff, and now we're expecting all these people who don't live like day-to-day our lives to find it. So come up with that list and try, if you can, to find products that can be found in a normal grocery store. If you can't, it's understandable, and you can give them other lists, but try and find ones that are at least at the grocery store. And it might be as simple as asking people to bring fresh fruit or fresh vegetables instead of other kind of things. Then before each party, request that the teacher just contact you so that you know a party is coming up, so you're aware, so that you can kind of prepare your child and you for that party that's coming up. And also request if you could speak to the parents of children who are having their school celebration, because that way you can call them up and say, look, this is the situation. Would you mind if you brought food in that would be safe for my child, or if your child can't eat, just ask if maybe they can put the food at the very end of class or something, so your child, if it's really hard for them, could leave the classroom and go to the library or something like that when they're during the party, or at least have something else that's special for them. During the day of the celebration, double check that the food is safe. If it's not safe, try and have a special cupcake or something prepared for your child that you can bring in. If your child's no formula, try and have a special treat for them. The other great thing is if it's not just a birthday party or something, like it's a Halloween or a Valentine's Day and people are giving away little treats, ask specifically that those are given at the end of the class rather than at the beginning, and try and ask that they're put in opaque bags so that they're not transparent and you can't see what's inside, and make a special one for your child. And to everybody else, it's going to look the same. They're not going to realize it's a different type of treats inside, because they're not supposed to open them until they're gone at the end of the day. And then the last thing, if you possibly can, and this is more important obviously with the younger children, try and attend the party. This isn't always easy, but if you can, try and attend the party to make sure that they're safe. So the biggest thing for many of us is actually not a holiday, it's how do you celebrate birthdays. And my theory is it's your child's day. And that means whatever you do on that day is for your child. So if your child can only eat broccoli and sugar, the only food that should be at that party, in my opinion, for my kid, should be broccoli and sugar. And if your child has no foods, there are definitely some options. You can do snow cones. We've done that many times, and the kids actually like it. You can do sugar cubes. If your child can have cotton candy, you can make cotton candy for all the kids, and water. We have had many parties at this point where the only thing offered was water and sugar cubes. And one year, Yoey actually wanted white ice cream, and he had me make Neocate ice cream for him, which he didn't eat, but I ate, and I was pregnant at the time. It was not a good idea. But everybody else had white ice cream. And then party bags. Instead of spending money on the food, spend money and make really cool party bags that the kids would be really excited about, so they're not paying attention to the food. And then take the focus off the food. So have a party with a huge theme that's a lot of fun, that the kids and the teens aren't going to be paying attention to the fact that they're not eating. Go to a bounce castle place. Go to a sports game if your son or daughter really likes sports. So there's a lot of different options that you have that aren't going to be food focused. And then have a theme, and then have the party at non-meal times. Instead of inviting people for like noon or 1, invite them for 2 or 3, where really food isn't going to be expected. And then the last thing is create, if your child can't eat it all, create beautiful edible cakes. So the reason I have this video up here is because, Yoey can't eat, and this is his birthday cake for his 3rd birthday. And when I was little, they had these crepe paper balls where you can unwind them, and they had really cool presents in them. And then at the very center, they had a bigger one. And I loved them when I was little. So I made this cake for Yoav, and he literally sat there opening it. My mom got really bored after like 5 minutes, and she started having like him carry it around the house to unravel it all. But he had a fun time. It's not the most beautiful cake, but it was really awesome for him, and it was really special, and it gave him something that he really loved. So now I'm going to show you actually some ideas for cakes. This little girl is having a flower cake, and you can actually buy these at 1-800-Flowers. They now have 2 options of flower cakes and 1 cupcake. They get delivered to your door, and you have a beautiful cake with the candles, and they come with the candles, and you can light the candles and sing happy birthday and have the cake. And we actually have some moms who are actually creating flower cakes based off of the ones you can get at 1-800-Flowers. So if you can't afford those, you can definitely go and make your own. This next cake is a wood piñata cake that I made for Yoey's party. And he really liked Thomas at the time, so we created a coal car for him. And we stuffed the coal car with cotton candy and a bunch of other toys, and then we got a piñata, and I stuffed it also with a bunch of toys, and then I stuck the candles on, kind of like the Celebration Thomas. If you ever have seen Thomas, I've had to see it a lot. And we lit the cake, and the kids really didn't notice, and they were really excited about having the cotton candy. This next cake is a decorated slice cake, And if you notice, this is decorated, and then there are little boxes, which are these individual boxes, and this one is actually opened. And these are actually, you can find the pattern online, and you can blow up the pattern to as big as you want, and you fold the boxes and make them kind of like origami, and you can stuff whatever you want inside. So for this particular cake, we put moon sand and I think shuttles, little shuttles, because the theme was space. And the great thing about these cakes is you can decorate them however you want, and the sky's the limit. So it's really not like you have to, just do a little box and everything. You can really make some amazing themes, and we've seen some really awesome themes on KFA's website. This one is a find a prize cake, which is really funny because the reason I came up with this idea was we were at Children's Hospital waiting for Yael's endoscopy, and they had this find a prize little container for kids with child life, and you looked inside and the kids were trying to find what's in there. So I recreated that for his birthday cake using melty beads, and he had to actually try and find all the things that I stashed in there with the melty beads. And the cool thing is afterwards he had a bunch of melty beads, so he could do a bunch of things with that. This next cake is a decorative tin cake, and I don't know if you can see it. It's over here, and then it's the same one here. It's decorated with Sesame Street, and this little girl was so excited to have her little cake decorated, and inside were different prizes and stuff that she could open and have. This is a wax cake, and the way I made this was I went and got a cake tin that was in the shape of the cars, because he was obsessed with cars at the time, and I poured in hot wax, waited for it to dry, and then the next day I sat and painted with different colors with wax. I colored the wax and I painted this cake, and let me tell you, if you do this, I would recommend buying a burner so you don't have to run back and forth to your stove, because it takes a long time if you do it that way. And then we just stuck the candles on, and he actually still has this cake in his room, and he loves it. This was actually one of his favorite cakes. So this little girl's mom made a cotton candy cake. It was the only thing she could have. And so the mom made a huge amount of cotton candy and then molded it into this cake shape and stuck some candles on it. And my husband was joking, you should be careful with this because cotton candy would be a really great, flambe if you aren't a little careful. So this is actually my favorite cake that I made. This is a sugar cake. So I wanted Yael to have an edible cake because he really wanted one. And so I got a recipe from KFA, which is how to make lollipops using just sugar. And it just uses water, sugar, and golden Lyle syrup, which is actually just refined sugar made into syrup. And I got silicone molds, and I made the cars out of silicone mold. And then there's cotton candy, lollipops as trees, as well as swizzle sticks. And then there's actually spun sugar, which if you do, be really careful, it burns, and it doesn't feel great. And he had a train cake. And I knew I succeeded when at the place that we were celebrating his birthday party, people came up to me who weren't part of our party and said, wow, that's the coolest cake I've ever seen. And I knew that that really meant that I'd come a long way, that my kid's cake is the one that they wanted. And the kids loved this. They grabbed it. Oh, and my husband mentioned that I should tell you that this was actually a mistake from the spun sugar. The spun sugar caramelized, and he started eating it, and he's like, oh, this is really good. This is the best stuff. So we made boulders out of it. So these are actually a list of all the KFA booklets that we have, and it's actually in your books. So if you are interested in more ideas on how to specifically celebrate individual holidays and not just an overall view of kind of strategies, you can go on KFA. However, you can get there from the APFED website. I believe it's under the resources on how do you celebrate holidays, and it will take you directly to these booklets. And I promise for the Christian booklets, I did have help with friends who are actually Christians, so they're appropriate traditions and everything. They're not the Jewish ideas. But you can get an idea. And the Passover one, for anybody who's Jewish here, is actually very special because it follows the Haggadah, so that you can use it for the whole holiday. So the most important thing when going into holidays is think outside the box. Be willing to explore. create new traditions, and most of all, have a good attitude so you guys can all have fun and create the most amazing memories for your children. Thank you so much.